Last night, I'll just start with this. Last night, from the plane, I had a pounding headache and didn't do anything about it because I was like, I'll push through. But once I'm laying in bed and I have a pounding headache, like I just can't fall asleep. So 2 a.m, I go, sometimes hotels have weird things in their vending machines. So I'm like, maybe they got Tylenol or something in their vending machine. They don't. They have women's deodorant, but they do not have Tylenol. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. I go to the concierge and she basically like laughed at me that I'm in pain. And she said, well, there's a gas station like a 5-minute drive. So I was wandering the streets of Grimsby at 2 a.m. I didn't have my wallet. I had a phone and I had my hotel key card. I was like, I hope they take tap wherever I end up. And we made it. It's good. There's a few cops. Yeah, there she is. That's my wife, everybody. Yeah, welcome here, Louisa. On the couch. Oh, yeah, I didn't even realize. That's awesome. Okay, awesome. Yeah, that'd be bad. Stay back there so nobody else can see you. That's good when you fall asleep. So I know we have people in here that are not kids leaders, but is anybody like, you're a pastor, director, leader of your kids ministry? Anybody? Yeah, bunch. Anybody like volunteer, stage, and a couple that. So Barry's here just to learn and grow. Barry's my cousin, and decided to bless us today with being here. And what's your role within your church? Volunteer. Awesome. Perfect. Welcome here. Okay, so we're gonna get going. I'd say it's me and Ashely. Ashley's going to do the afternoon sessions, and I'm going to do the morning ones for kids ministry. Today, tomorrow's going to be more like collaborative, at least in the morning. We're going to talk about volunteers. I don't have all the answers about volunteers, okay? But we're going to work together. We're going to kind of come up with some things that will help each other. Today, I want to talk about 2 things that I don't know. Like I get pretty fired up about this, and it's passion and urgency. So those are the 2 words that we're going to get into today when it comes to kids ministry, because it's easy to just kind of get up and regurgitate information or kind of walk through and put on something. But if we do it with purpose and with passion and urgency, then it's going to hit it a whole nother level. So I want to just give an introduction to me. So my name is Scott. I'm from Southgate Church in Langley. So Pastor Dave McTaggart was our senior pastor. He hired me, and now he has since passed leadership on. And I've been involved in Sunday school ministry since I was like grade 6. Like grade 5, turn around, bam, I'm back in the class. I grew up in a Mennonite Brethren church. It's pretty dry, it was tough sometimes for Sunday school ministry. And the people that were helping out were like the grandma age, and they did amazing with what they knew and with what they were blessed with. But it felt pretty dry at times, right? So I feel like that's where some of my passion comes from. When I was 18, I moved to New York City, and I worked at Metro Ministries, which at the time, it probably still is, was the world's largest Sunday school. So within New York City, we reached 20,000 kids a week with the different teams that we had, and we were going all over the city and literally on the sidewalk preaching to kids, whoever showed up, and parents and whoever's within earshot. And there's sirens going on in the background, like there's crazy stuff. It's the hood. We're in the ghetto, and that's where I met my wife, and she's from Brooklyn, and she grew up through that ministry and then volunteered there and then came on staff, and that's the time where I met her. It wasn't when she was a child. So then we got married, and then we moved back to Langley, which is where I'm from. That's where I was born. And again, been involved in kids ministry. We were looking for a church when we came back. We found Southgate, and it was kind of like, hey, let's volunteer, let's get involved, let's not go back into full-time ministry, because that's, we thought those days were behind us. And so we did that. We volunteered, and things were going great. And then probably about 4 years ago, Pastor Charlie Sweet, who some of you have met, came to our church and called us in front of the church, and for 15 minutes prophesied over us that we were going to be in kids ministry, which is super awkward because the kids pastors were there at the time, and it just made it really uncomfortable. But it was really clear what direction our life was heading, and we fought that for a while, for a long time. I'd say we said no. And even when a position opened up, so they resigned, there's a position that opened up, and we just were like, no, we're not even entertaining this. And to the church, they knew our history, they knew we did kids ministry. Nobody came to ask us or feel it out or anything. They just said, you know what, if God's going to work something, we trust that. And so I asked Pastor Dave to meet, and he had no idea what this was about. This was a little over like 2.5 years ago. And I asked him to meet, and he said, sure, let's meet. And I walked in. Again, he had no idea what I was about to say, but the first words I said to him, I don't want to be here right now. That was how strong I was fighting against God. I was like, I do not want to do this right now. I don't want to be here. And then we walked that road, and then here we are. We've been on staff. I've been on staff, and Lewis has been supporting me in that for just over 2 years. So 2 years ago at this conference, we were here, I think in the same room, listening to kids ministry talk. I've been on staff for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks at that point. But that's kind of where I have come from. And so just in terms of the volume, like in New York, we probably did like 1,000 plus Sunday school lessons just in the time, because there's so many. You do a bunch of them every day. It's not like you have 1 week or one time every week. You're just going all the time. And so I think like each of us has a story about how we ended up in kids ministry, and you know how we whether we came in kicking and screaming like I did, or whether you're like, I'm pumped to be here, this is awesome, and you know, whatever the case, we want to use this time to grow together. Yes, Ashely and I have been asked to speak, but like we're not the be all end all for kids ministry. Like it very much is whatever works for your group and your kids and your moment. But I think when we talk about these things, passion and urgency, this can fit anywhere, and it can really change the way that we're doing things, and we're doing it with intentionality so that our kids are impacted and bettered for it, and they can grow, and we can grow, and we can use our volunteers to grow as well. So, oh, hey there. I was just telling them how I didn't want to be there in your office that one time, and here we are. So thanks for stopping by. And then, like, I mean, I think we've all been in sessions like this where it's like there's time for question or sharing at the end, and then it's like super quiet and uncomfortable. Like, don't do that, all right? Like, let's engage with each other. I'm going to ask you to think about a question as we go through, and I invite you to share at the end. I'm not going to force it, but I think it's a place where we can be encouraged and built up just as kids leaders, and we can grow together. So, and I would say, like, the topics that Ashely's talking about, we've talked on the phone a couple times, maybe over the last couple months, and just hearing her talk about some of the things that she's passionate about, like, that got me fired up, and I was like, I can't wait to hear some of the things that she's talking about, and just, yeah, I think we can all kind of grow and learn from each other as we do this, okay? So that's the goal of the next 2 days. I'd love it if you came to all 4 of them. If you can't and you can only pick some, that's fine, but you should do all 4. So today, again, we're tackling a topic that, again, I feel strongly about. It's the passion and urgency that we can have when we're diving into kids ministry. And yes, don't get me wrong, the Holy Spirit can speak to kids no matter how it's presented to them, no matter, like, absolutely. Let's put that out there first. But I think we're doing our kids and ourselves a disservice if we don't put in everything that we have inside to get these kids going on. And I think, like, I'm a crier, very much so. So if I start leaking here, just, you know, it's all good, okay? I'm fully comfortable with this now. See, she brings the tissue. Like this is not the first time that this has happened, okay? You'd think I'd bring my own. So I think this is going to increase the effectiveness and the depth into which our ministries can go. And so let's dive right into it. So passion comes when you believe what you're saying, right? It's deep inside of you. There's a story in Jeremiah that we're going to talk about in a minute, but it's something like you've been placed in this position, in this room, with something to say, and it's something that is just like, you can't wait to get it out, right? It's something that, you know, it's in the dictionary, an intense driving, overmastering feeling or conviction. Okay, so that should inspire everything about your lesson, how it's presented, from your, like, when the kids are coming in, when you're checking them in, when you're saying hi to family, they should feel that, right? And I know we talked about, like, you're not allowed to have a down Sunday, right? And that's part of it, right? There's things that, you know, there's hard days, but your passion and what you feel for kids ministry needs to come out, and it's going to make such a difference. And to the way that your kids hear it, and to the way your volunteers are diving in as well. We'll talk about volunteers tomorrow. And again, I'm excited about that one. So urgency is what comes naturally after passion, because it's burning inside of you, right? The urgency is that you need to let it out. and you need to tell somebody, because what you have to say is so important that you just can't keep it in anymore, right? It's something that will change kids' lives. It will change parents' lives. Whoever's within earshot, they need to hear the message that you're teaching in that moment. And it needs to be told in a way, and this, I feel super passionately about this as well, it needs to be presented and told in a way that they will understand it as much as you do. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit later on about, curriculum and what we're using and why we're using it and stuff like that. But the main thing that we're talking about is like they need to be able to understand it, and it needs to be in a way at their level, communicated properly so that they can learn and they can grow. So dictionary for urgency is importance requiring swift action. It cannot wait. There will be highs and there will be lows, and we talked about that. And I, like just a couple months ago, I showed up to church, and we've all been through summer, right? Like summer camp, there's a big kind of push and high for that, and then there's youth camp and whatever, and then there's kind of a lull. And then you're like, okay, it's launch time, it's time to go, and maybe you're like, yes, launch was amazing, I'm ready to, I'm fired up. Or maybe you're just like, I'm tired right now. And I would say, like 2 months ago, I had a feeling like that on Sunday morning. And I want to say it was, again, I kind of don't feel like I'm ready to be here right now. And that's a troubling thing if that's your job on Sunday mornings, right? Like that's a hard place to be in. And so the question that I'm going to ask you, and I hope that we can get some people sharing this at the end, is what is your why? So we need to understand why we're doing this, so that in those low times and in the high times that we can kind of stay level, we can stay grounded and be like, okay, this is why, yes, I was called to this, yes, everything leading up to it, but to sustain you and to keep going, what is it inside of you that you need to bring out and communicate to these kids? So again, think about that as we're talking, and as we share it later. I think it builds faith, it encourages each other, and I think we'll grow from that. So again, this story in Jeremiah. Jeremiah, if you don't know him too well, was a prophet. He was told at a young age he was going to be a prophet. And you'd think like, hey, that's sweet. That's an awesome calling. I love it. The problem was that everything he was told to talk about was like death and destruction and despair. Like he did not have a positive message to share to anybody. And so he was tasked with this, with sharing with the world everything that was going on, but it was tough stuff. Okay, so Jeremiah chapter 20, he had been talking and prophesying, and it says he was struck and put in stocks, so some type of restraints by a man named Pashur. And so he put him in there for the day just to shut him up and say, okay, I'm done with you for now. And then he took him out again the next day. And so Pashur took him out, and then Jeremiah still spoke against him, because he had this word from God, and he said to Pashur, he said, I will make you a terror to yourself and all your friends. You will go to Babylon and you will die, you and all your friends to whom you prophesied lies. So he's like a glutton for punishment, right? He has it, and he just has to talk. Okay, that's a beautiful thing. So then he launches into a prayer after that, and he says, everybody's against me. I'm being mocked all over the place, and I can't, God, what are you doing? This is too hard. And so verse 9, it comes to a head, and he's having this internal battle, and he says this, then I said, I will not make mention of him, of God, nor speak anymore in his name. So he's like, I'm done. God, I did it for a certain number of times. I tried, and I can't do it anymore. And then here's where and we talk about passion and urgency, this is where his comes from. It says, but his word was in my heart like a burning fire shut up in my bones. I was weary of holding it back, and I could not. How powerful is that, right? Passion and urgency. He had a message. It's something inside of him. And he tried holding it back. That's the part that I love, is that he was like, I cannot do this, and I don't want to do this anymore. That's the spot that I was in. I don't want to do this. But he couldn't hold it back anymore. And so that type of passion and urgency is what we should be striving on for as we focus on kids ministry. So that's kind of the idea, the theory behind it all, but that brings into the practical, right? How do we approach things? How do we do this in a way that, communicates that to people, and we do it intentionally? So What does a Sunday morning look like? What curriculum are we using? How do we maximize, if we have 30 minutes, if we have 45 minutes, if we have an hour, if we have more, how do we maximize that time, right? Because these kids are here now, and it doesn't matter. I think we've all heard, like, this is babysitting, or this is, you're watching my kids for half an hour, right? It's frustrating, right? I mean, like, let them think that, honestly, because we have the kids, right? It doesn't matter what any parents think. It doesn't matter, like, if they have no expectations of what their kids are going to learn or what they're going to experience. But we have them here. Like, let's do something with it. And I think that's a super important attitude to have, right? Like, and we can do, games and songs and everything. And that's fun. That's important. But if the kids aren't changing with knowledge that is life-changing, if they aren't leaving with a lesson that's like, wow. This is like this will affect me as I go through my days, and as these things are happening to me, examples, like I can go back to that lesson, to that day where I was, and then I can draw on that, and I know what to do. Okay, I want to like I'm racing through this, guys. I'm sorry, I'm fired up. So I have lots of time to talk at the end. But I want to talk about our lessons for a few minutes, okay, and how we go about doing this. In New York, we had a rule that sounds kind of silly as it was told to me, but it makes sense. So the rule was that if you can't teach anything, you can't do any Sunday school lesson that you don't believe in. And that might seem silly because, we're all Christians, Spirit-filled, we're ready, right? And I'll throw an example in there because, if there was a lesson topic that was like, God is good all the time, right? And, we can get behind that, right? But there's some times in life where you're like, oof, I don't know if I should be the one up there talking about this right now because it's not like deep. And that's what I mean by like doing a disservice to our kids is if I can't deliver that lesson with the passion, with the urgency, I shouldn't be the one up there doing it. I can regurgitate information. I can put it out there. I can like recite it for them. I can read it off a paper, which... Side note, I don't let any of our leaders read off papers. I can't, I don't know. It's hard to communicate your it's not in here. It's dry, I think. Anyway, that's me. But do I have the passion, the urgency to make it stick? Again, the Holy Spirit can move. He can touch people if you're reading off a paper. Absolutely. But again, are we putting everything into it that we're called to by just getting up there and reciting some information? Okay? And again, like, this is a perfect world. If there's no other options, if all the leaders called in sick, then yeah, you're doing the lesson, right? And you're going to have to trust and pray that it lands. But if you have other options, like, you should not be in the one teaching it. And we had this, I don't know, a year and a half ago, where, Louisa and I were going through something and we had leaders that were like, no, we got you. Like, don't worry about doing lessons for a few weeks even. Like, we'll pick up the slack here. And you guys, wrestle with what you need to wrestle with. And then when you're ready, we're good, right? Like that's the kind of team that I think we need to develop and we need to build. So when we're doing lessons, and again, at the end, if we talk about curriculums and what we're using, that's great. I mean, like object lessons, skits, those are great. One of the most powerful things that we have is our story, right? And we know that, and obviously, we want to present it to kids at an applicable level, right? I don't want to talk about I actually had a leader doing a lesson one time, and when it was time to relate to her own life, she talked about her hot water heater not working and flooding the basement, and the kids were like, "What? Like, what are you talking about? Why? What?" Yeah, it was, and it went on for way too long. Like it was uncomfortable. So yeah, our story again. I've found that in New York on Saturdays we'd have a room full of 800 kids. 800 kids in this room. They're from the ghetto. They've been told their whole lives that they have ADHD or they're troublemakers or whatever. And you could be in this room and you could hear a pin drop. And it's why? It's because the teachers are presenting it in a way that's understandable and relatable. There's expectations laid out on them for their behavior for sure. There's rules. But on large part, it's on the teacher to be able to communicate it properly. And I found, kids will get fidgety, they'll be messing around a little bit. But if you say, when I was your age, boom, all the eyes are back on you. And it's like, wow, yeah, you went through this and I'm going through this, or I went through this and I didn't know what to do, but I want to know what you did. And let's talk about that, right? Side note, I can judge how well I've done by the amount of bathroom breaks that kids take. If kids don't go to the bathroom, then that was a good lesson, right? If it's not a good lesson, they're going to be lining up to go. Because once one of them goes, it's like, oh, that's an option? Yeah, let's go. And I'm not saying hold it like, if you really got to go, you got to go. But if the lesson's engaging and it's powerful, like, they don't want to go anywhere. They want to be right here. I think once you use your personal experience, it's not a theory anymore. It's tangible. It's real. So I do want to touch on curriculum here for a minute, and I don't want to judge anybody for what you're using. I just want you to think about why you're using it, and that's if it works for you, that's great. If you thought about it, if you've planned it out, and this is the best thing for your kids and for your group, absolutely use it. So, but a lot of times, and I've experienced this as a volunteer in ministry and kids ministry, is that the curriculum that was being used is just because it was easiest. Right? There's so many that come with a nice bow on it, and there's videos you can play, and it's just here, kids, this is what you do at home all day anyways, but here, let's do this at church too. And stacking, picking series and topics just because, oh, this is an 8-week one for summer. And then we got 6 more weeks until Thanksgiving, and not even putting any thought into what we're actually talking about. It's just stacking things up. It looks really good when you got the year planned out like that, but have you thought about it? Have you looked at your kids and what they need and what they're going through and kind of picked and choose? Are you flexible on that? Or is it just this is what we're doing because this is what fits best and I don't really have to think too much about it, right? That's kind of, I feel really strongly about this. I will say for VBS, I've used the Orange curriculum for 3 years. Anybody Orange? Anybody? Yeah? Awesome. So it's great, right? It comes with everything. It comes with, all your social media, your graphics, your decorations, ideas for crafts and games and whatever. I love their worship songs. That's awesome. One thing that I will never do, and again, I don't want to pass judgment on people that use Orange, is that I don't want to use their Bible story videos for my kids. And I've had, there's another church in our area where they do the same thing. They have a massive VBS. It's awesome. And they say, well, we don't really have any good teachers, so we're just going to play the video. And to me, that's something, 100 times out of 100, I would rather get up and get somebody to teach it live than play a video. And maybe that's just me, and maybe I'm, that's too hard to prepare, because you need, if it's not you need volunteers, you need good communicators, you need to develop them, you need, it's a lot of work to get to that point. But when you're in that room and you can read the audience, and it's not just a video, we're competing with, they watch YouTube videos all the time, they watch, we're competing with media and everything, and for a communicator to get up and to engage with them and to give them real life examples that maybe you noticed yesterday at camp, and you're able to bring that in, you're able to give more opportunity for prayer at the end, or whatever it is, I think it's 100% worth it. All that time and effort to develop your volunteers and your leaders and your trainers. And I'm talking to myself here too, because I'm a guy that likes to just do it myself. I don't like to go through the training process with everybody else. So this past Sunday we had, I think, 24 kids leaders in a teacher training time. And we'll see where it goes. If I get 3 teachers out of it, then yeah, it's worth it, right? If I get some people that are dynamic communicators that can bring across the lesson, then 100%, that's so worth it. But it takes a lot of time after, right? The first training is one thing, but giving them practice and giving them opportunity and following up with them during the week and it takes a lot of work. And so again, tomorrow, talking about volunteers and how do we develop them. I think that's a good one. They're all good. You should just come to all 4. But yeah, I feel passionate about that. And a large number of this is when I first took over, middle to end of COVID, church split, whatever, a bunch of good adult volunteers had left. And what am I left with? I'm left with a bunch of youth. I've always said that I do not work with youth. I do not want to work with youth. And now all of a sudden I have this youth ministry that wants to help on Sunday mornings, not because they desperately want to be in kids ministry, but because they don't want to be next door. So, okay, I got to work with what I got, right? So, but those are the people that are important. And same thing as when you're choosing curriculum, like we're raising up the servants and the leaders of the next generation. So we need to teach them, right? We need to teach them when they're young so that when they're teenagers and they're in grades 6 to 8 or whatever, that they can help with preschool and they can help clean up after. We meet at a high school gym. So we have to clean up every week, right? So there's lots of like opportunities to get involved, but if they don't see the value in it, if they don't see the purpose in it, then we're just going to keep doing it ourselves for the rest of however long we're in the high school gym, which hopefully is not long. We'll see. So again, the videos, yeah, some of them are good teachers, some of them are great, but the passion, the urgency that's in you does not come out when you're playing a video of somebody else up there teaching. That's again, I just want you to ask why. If you're doing it now, no judgment, just ask why, right? If it's what's best for your kids, great, keep doing it, right? Every church is different. I'm just saying what's worked for me and what's worked for us. But again, just ask yourself, why are we doing this? Okay. Where am I at here? I also think if you get your youth and other leaders involved, it helps your kids too. Because they see the older, I don't know. It's one thing to have me standing up there every week, but to have other, even moms or dads or older brothers or sisters getting up there and teaching a lesson, that's powerful. I think the kids recognize that, and they're involved in it. So again, I told you I powered right through this, right? So we got some time left, but I want to give us a chance to share, and I encourage you, please. I'd love it if everybody did this. I'll go first, and then we can go into some questions. But I just want to know, what is your why? If it's not kids ministry, what is your why in the ministry that you're in? What brought you into it? What keeps you going in it? What's your, what gets you fired up about what you're doing right now? And will sustain you through the I don't want to be here moments. Because they'll come, right? They're going to come. And, sometimes they come more often than you'd like them to, or you'd like to think they would. And sometimes, you just need to refocus and recenter. I don't want to pick on youth pastors right now, but what's the average life of a youth pastor expectancy job position? I've heard it was like 2 years or something, right? A year and a half, right? I don't know. If God called you to it, you're going to go through some lows, especially in youth ministry. You're going to go through some lows, right? So you need to know why you're there to kind of sustain you through that. And I like I said, it's not everybody, sometimes situations change and stuff like that, but that to me is, I don't know, that's hard to hear. So for me, I was brought in kicking and screaming, right? I'd done it for a bunch of years and thought my time was over. Ministry happened, right? Life happened. You have situations, you have instances, right? It's hard. And we were like, okay, I feel like God's calling us back to Canada. Great. And, that chapter's over. I'll volunteer. And then we get, prophetic word, and it's like, okay, I'll volunteer harder because I really don't want to go on staff, right? I really don't want to get to that point. But the whole way, we've known that God is the one leading the way. It's funny, during the period when we didn't have a kids pastor, somebody stepped up to be the interim kids leader, and she got sick one week, and I was called to do, it was all video at that time. Again, I hate videos, but so I was doing a video, and Louisa was filming me, and we were in our house, and we filmed it, and we were still pushing back against, no, we don't want to do this. And she stopped recording, and she just looked at me. She said, I got goosebumps right now. We need to pray about this. And that kind of started our journey onto that. But for me, for my why, yes, we have all these markers along the way, prophetic words and leading into it. But for me, it comes from growing up in the Mennonite Brethren Church and going to Sunday school and feeling so seriously, this is it? It didn't mean anything, right? It was words. It wasn't something that was deep and that was tangible. So if I can come to kids and help make it come alive for them or make it real for them, then absolutely. Like that's what gets me fired up. Yeah, that's like if we don't know when these kids are going to come back. You might get a family come for the first time, right? You don't know if they're going to come back. And if they drop off their kids and their kids are, they say, okay, just watch my kids for half an hour. Okay, thank you. Like, I hate your mindset, but thank you. And boom, let's throw stones. Yeah, we're gonna drop those. Yeah, good. We're building here. So we've got some time. And again, I like the next few sessions, and I don't know what Ashely specifically has planned. I just know the ideas. But I'd love it if it's just collaboration, and if we're all best buddies by the end, just because that we're sharing ideas. We're all in the same job, right? We're all doing pretty much the same thing, and if we can learn even a little tidbit of how to do it better, or get inspired by somebody else's why, I think we're gonna come out ahead. Okay, so that's all I got for today. I want to open it up though, and just ask the question: what is your why? And what got you into kids ministry? What keeps you going in those low points? And if it's silence, then it's silence, and we'll move on after that. But I would honestly, I would love it if you just step out there and and go for it.
I don't want to leave you silent because I don't want to be left silent later. I'd say my why actually comes from my testimony. So come from a very, very broken home. And I'll share a little bit more about that over the next couple of days. But what sustained me is that I had a single mom who kept me in church and she prayed for me. And so I see so many families now broken, right? And we have a lot of those kids in our ministry, and that's what keeps me going. Yeah. I get where you're coming from, and God has brought me through, and I'm on the other side, and regardless of your circumstance right now, God's got this. Yeah. And so that's what sustains me. That's awesome. My why.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Louisa. Yeah.
Keep it quiet.
Yeah.
I think my why is maybe because it was borderline audible, but God told us that we should do kids ministry, and He made it sound very nice, and so I said we should pray for it right away. Actually, I didn't. I was recording, and God spoke, and I was like, no. And I'm not even gonna tell Scott anything because he's gonna try to entertain us, and it's just a flat out no. And then it was bedtime, and I was like, dang it. So we spoke about it. But beyond that, I got saved through children's ministry. I come from a broken home. My family's far from Christian. That's a whole other story in itself. But this Sunday school where we worked at, I would go to Saturday Sunday school, that's what they called it. And that's where I heard the message about it. And it was just passion and urgency. And I personally am not one of the Sunday school teachers. You'll find I'm more like the mom and grandma, one running on the side, behind the scenes. And in that ministry, we all had an assigned drought pastor, is that what you call them? And my rock pastor came and visited me every week, and she would pour into me, even when I would be go away. So that's kind of my way on Sunday mornings. I'm okay, I'm not front and center. I don't want to be front and center, but I'm going to go talk to some kids. And we have some rough ones who drive me nuts, but they're my favorite, honestly. So I think that's my way. It's more I'm paying it forward, and I truly believe that kids ministry, you plant a seed, and that is the best ministry, to be honest. And it bothers me when it's crazy, but that's my way. And supporting him in his vision and seeing dude's crying about kids ministry. So that gives me, it's okay, yeah, even on the bad days, I'm okay, I'm gonna go and support Scott even when I don't want to be here, right? And I find that those days if you don't want to be there, at least for me since I'm behind the scenes, so I don't want to be the best days because you see some big smiley goofy kids and it's no, I make it better.
Share my life.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times kids get pushed to the side. Like
Yeah.
people disregard who they are, they ignore them. They seem like not as important unless they're your kids, right? Like people like they don't really want to hear what they have to say. But I'm like a big advocate. I'm like, little kids, big plans. Like God's got a plan for your life. Like you're gonna move mountains. You're a leader in the school you're at. People don't see it right now. God sees it, you know, like, so that gets me going. And I'm like, yeah, I see you in nursery holding babies. Like, you can speak life to them as you're holding them. You can empower them. As they're like crying their heart out, they can sense that, right? Like, they can sense, like, I don't want to be here, or someone doesn't like this, you know, but when you're holding them, like, you get to speak life over them, and you get to, like, declare the truth over their lives. So I feel like I love talking to kids. I mean, I have to have a balance with that because I would rather talk to them than adults, to be honest, right? I love to sit down and hear like the things they ask you, like, are you sure God is in my heart? Like, how did he get there? And you're like, okay, I gotta figure this out. I gotta figure out a way to explain this to you, because if I don't get it right, like my kids ask me that all the time, like, Mommy, like, where's the Holy Spirit? Like, are you sure? Like, but how is God gonna see me? And I'm like, I gotta figure that out. And I'm like, yeah, this is not like a question that, this isn't coming from you. This isn't your language. This is God putting that in you. And I'm like, I get the job. I get the honor and the privilege to share with you what God has for you at your age. And as I do that, it's a ripple effect. You get to pass on to the person in your school, to the teachers in your school, to those all around you. And I'm like, that's my why. I get fired up because I'm like, they're so little, the youngest and the oldest, but they have big plans, man. Like, God's got something in store for them. And I'm like, don't push them around, because you got me to deal with. Like, any kid anywhere, we're going to love them. So that gets me going. That's my why.
Awesome.
I can share my why. My why is I came from a broken home as well, raised by my grandparents in the church. I worked in the public sector as an EA for the past 5 years. And my heart ached because I couldn't share the message of God without getting like my hands slapped. And I want to raise up these kids to be disciples and stewards of God, and like the vessels to be able to live out who God is and to be able to share freely, even in the world where sharing God is something that is not looked fondly upon. And that these kids have so much potential that they need to have those mustard seeds planted in them, where they can just become who God wants them to be. And last week I was walking through my classes, my wing in the building, and I just saw my teachers, they weren't reading the Bible, the kids were. The kids were reading it to the class, and I just thought that was so powerful to see them all reading God's word, not just the teachers. So.
Awesome.
I'm getting really emotional. I didn't expect to ever be emotional.
Sorry.
No, thank you. No, I really appreciate it. Sorry for you.
Give her a tissue.
Yeah, tissues are here. You need some?
I think it's refreshing to hear just after doing it for so long. And but I think the why is like, oh, thank you very much. Is that they are worth our time and our effort and the money and preparation and cutting out things, and like they are worth all of that. I didn't grow up in a broken home. Later on, my parents got divorced, but like as a kid, I remember like we just did a big training in our church for the team and everything, and like I just always share when I was 8. The first time I ever experienced Jesus was when I was 8 in a little wooden pew of a Baptist church. And I grew up in a little tiny Baptist church. There was Sunday school before church, but it was literally just a folding table and a bunch of aisles. And I don't remember anything being special about that. Probably like I was excited about the graham crackers or whatever. But so it happened like in a regular, service or whatever. But the pastor was just talking about Jesus to a bunch of adults, but I just remember wanting to cry as an 8-year-old. But like it's just a deposit of God's, presence, and I'm like, so I think it's just like I want to, now having 3 children of our own, like I just want, not just because we talk about our training, we're not there just to entertain children. I'm like, I love what you said, like someone actually thinks the same thing. Like, I don't year, everything is babysitting. Third year, I'm gonna do something with them.
Yeah.
Because they're worth it. Like, let's, whatever we do, it's like, there can be curriculum wars and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't even matter, but like, let's make this half hour or hour worth it, because like, oh, worth it.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll share too, I'll share my how first. We were in a church in Alberta and we were there for 10 years, and I served in kids ministry, I don't know, maybe 2 years, and then we were on eldership and the lead pastor asked us to not be in the kids' rooms, to be in the front row. So I just always was very happy to send my kids, bye-bye, we're doing other things here. And but my kids absolutely loved going to church. They would be so excited on a Sunday morning, loved kids ministry, loved church. Then we moved to Abbotsford, BC, and the children's pastor, we went to go and help the church in Abbotsford, and the children's pastor went on mat leave, and the lead pastor, Pastor Brian, asked me to do the kids ministry. I was like, what? Yeah, that is very different from my mom. I didn't ever feel called to kids ministry, or so I very much was like, okay, I'm standing in for a year for her, we'll do this, and I'll do my best, and Jesus help me. And then in March at the previous MFI, I just got so convicted in my heart that God was like, you can't just be doing this in your head for a year. I want you to give it your everything and to do it as if you're going to do this for the rest of your life. And I was like, what? Yeah, and it really convicted me and changed my heart. And I think what gives me the most joy is just to see kids being excited to go to church. And we grew up very reformed kind of church, so I absolutely hated kids ministry. And I just love seeing my kids being excited about kids ministry. And so it's just an honor to be part of creating that culture of being excited about kids and having like to come to church and not begrudgingly, do we really have to go, Mom? So.
I'll share.
Yeah.
I think, since I was young, I've always wanted to work with children. I love kids. I am a teacher, by certification, but I also just recently got asked to oversee the kids at our church, which I never thought of. As a youth, I came to the Lord as a youth. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but I remember everyone in youth. It was I feel like it was just the culture. It was everyone's yeah, I'm gonna be a pastor, I'm gonna be a pastor, or a youth pastor. And I remember always saying to absolutely not, I'm not doing ministry, but I love you, God, but I won't do ministry in that way. And here I am today. So it's just cool just to know that, I don't know, just God changed the plans, but I'm just so excited. I think one of the biggest things for me currently, there's so many reasons why I love working with kids, but I just feel in this time, there's just so much so many lives just being thrown at our kids, and I don't know, I'm just emotional, but I just feel if we have the chance to just tell them the truth and leave them in a place where they're they know how loved and valuable they are, and I just feel there's just so much confusion out there, and I just feel if they can come on a Sunday, they can just come, and it's the one place where they can just know that they're known, and it's not confusing. It's just it's love, and it's truth, and it's I think if that's just my heart, and I don't know, I'm not doing a perfect job at it, but I hope, and my prayer is that they leave with that seed of truth, just within them, that they can carry that through, so that when lies come at them, they know what is truth and stand on that.
Anybody else? I want to make sure we leave room for that.
If I was sure, because I just started in kids ministry 2 months ago. So I'm still in the honeymoon, you know? So I'm still saying oh, everything is perfect. I'm so happy to go at 6 a.m. Wake up and see the kids. Woo! So maybe in 1 year I will come.
guys. Say something. I've been wrestling here. When you say like a year from now, you come and talk to us. I keep on getting this vision in my head. So I was maybe like 9 or 10, and there was a Sunday school teacher. Her name was Nana. I can never. Her name is Olga, but we call her Nana. I can never forget. She's teaching. There's like 800 of us in the room, and she just started crying, and I was like, whoa. So now that I'm an adult, I was like, oh, she must have been going through something with her husband, because she spoke about how hard it is for her to love her husband, but God gives, the lesson was like, God gives you the strength to do like the hard things, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So at this point, I'm like engaged. I'm like, oh, she's crying. And even now, like years, I'm on 35, doing math, I was like 8 or 9. It reminds me of Nana, like breaking down. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. Like if it's hard, age appropriate, of course. It's okay to be like, you know what, sometimes things happen and it sucks, but God is with us. And this woman doesn't know how much she has helped me in my marriage, because when I'm like at my wit's end, believe it or not, he's not a saint. I still love you. When I'm at my wit's end, I'm thinking, I'm like, God helps me do hard things. Or when I don't feel like I'm lovable or whatever, God helps me. God helps Nana. And this woman is still married. I follow her on Facebook. But I just felt like I have to share. Like if you're having a hard day, it's okay. If you need to cry, it's okay. Like the kids will still love you. The kids will appreciate your honesty. And years, decades later, they're gonna remember, oh wow, life wasn't all perfect for her. So we're gonna get through this. And I think he shared some stories of when God wasn't good, when things were hard, and the kids actually grasp it. It's okay to be vulnerable, right? And I share my stories with kids. I tell them, actually with my son, it's hilarious, he's 6. I tell him all like the bad stories, well not like all bad, childhood behavior. And he like, so that's how I get to him the most. I'll be like, you know, when mommy was younger, mommy makes some bad choices, and he's like, what? So be vulnerable. It's okay. Like the kids can have age appropriate, right? So I just thought I should share that.
So I trust that there's nobody else. This is kind of leading into tomorrow's then. Is so everything that we've just shared, does your team know that about you? It's your vision for kids ministry. You're inspiring them to come with you, to help you do your mission. Do they know that? Have you shared that with them? So I think that's really important. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So we've got like, I don't know, 5-ish minutes before lunch. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or concerns before we head out for lunch? Anything at all? Doesn't have to be what we talked about. Yeah.
So, how do you prepare your teachers, your volunteers to grow? And like you were mentioning about like at school age, they don't use the paper, they use the videos. Right. Like you train them how to like teach properly to their kids. So how do you do it?
So when we were in New York, there's an internship program that we did, and 3 mornings a week we were trained and taught, and like we went through an extensive thing. And then the afternoons we would go out and practice it. So the lady that did that actually lives in Vancouver now, and she has her own curriculum company. She writes lessons, and she has a bunch of training videos. That's a great place to start, because I have been taught, I don't feel like I'm a great trainer for teachers. So I actually brought her in this past Sunday, and I had 24 of our people in there listening to her, and you know, she got them to like read the lesson and then practice it a few times and then get up in front of leaders and do it. Like you need to, they have videos on that. I can give you information on that. It is very much a work in progress. And I think the hardest thing about this is that there's only once a week that you can like practice with them. So you prepare them, and they have busy lives, right? So like their times of needing or wanting help might not line up with your time of being available to help. But it's a lot of it is, you give them some basic instruction, like I want you to focus on this topic. Here's an object that you can use. Like I'm just trying to think of a good object that I would.
The water.
Which one?
The apple thing. Was it the apple?
Okay, so a few weeks ago I did a lesson on nothing can separate you from God's love. So we had like this vase that had water in it, and then there was a plate on top, and then there's like a little toilet paper holder, and then there was an egg. And so the point was that, you're the egg, God's love is down here. Sometimes it feels like there's stuff that's separating you from God's love. Like you've done something, you've sinned, you've done something that separates you. And I saw it on YouTube, I couldn't believe it. But when you pull the plate away, the egg drops right into the water. It's worked 2 times for me now, so that's good. But just using something like that will help a teacher if they have like a prop or something to come back to. It'll help keep them focused. Because we don't want them rambling for 10 minutes either. We want like 4 minutes, boom. Let's talk about the key things that we're talking about. Let's introduce the memory verse. Let's use our object. And then, I love, using personal examples, or like, hey, maybe you guys are going through something at school where, your best friend last year doesn't want to be best friends anymore. Like you're going through hard times. God's still with you, right? And then you kind of encourage them to wrap it up, and then you bring the next teacher up, and they teach a Bible lesson, and then the next one. The thing I love about the curriculum that her name is Abby, she teaches and writes is that so there's an introduction where you just like introduce the topic of the day, the memory verse, and there's a Bible lesson, so somebody from the Bible that went through what we're talking about, and then there's like a fictional made-up story with story frames that kids love stories. It's 8 frames long, and you can just go nuts with it. Different voices, character, and at some point you stop and you preach again because this character is going through what you were just talking about, and it kind of brings it back home. So to answer your question, I'm not really doing a good job, but there is videos out there that I can point you towards, but a lot of it is just repetition, and then giving them feedback. Like, hey, our topic. I'll use the example that she used on Sunday. Our topic is anxiety, but you didn't mention anxiety like once. You talked about all these other feelings, but the one we're trying to focus on is anxiety. And then I don't even remember, don't be anxious, pray, or when you're anxious, pray, or something like that. That was the kind of the topic of it. So we always want to bring it back to that point. But yeah, it's repetition. It's just getting them comfortable in front of people a lot of times. Right, and I'm trying to tell them this is going to help you with like high school presentations, college, business. Like it's going to help you in life. Even if I train you and you leave kids ministry, like you're set up much better than when you started, right? Yes.
So when I had to teach too in this ministry that we worked at, we were in choice. I remember I got a memo and they're like, "Well, you're needed Friday night for rehearsal," and I was like, "What?" And the same lady told me how I can start. And with younger people, you can tell them, okay, we're gonna warm you up. Sure, ask the question. What are you teaching? Like, for instance, don't be anxious about anything. What's the time you're gonna act when you were anxious? And then they'll tell you, and then you're like, okay, share that. And then you kind of get them used to being upfront, and then they can do more preaching type things. But I think technically everyone likes to talk about themselves. I think we can fight it, but we do. That might be a good way to get like your volunteers. It's like, I want you to come share a story about when God was faithful, and you're gonna tell these kids that, and you're encouraging them. Someone in that room is going through what you went through, so we're gonna encourage them. So I say start small. That was really helpful for me. I was like pretty timid. I was terrified, and that helped. And it helped with the memorization because they're very strict with reading paper. You don't forget your story, right? So this is the main point. Don't be anxious. Now share what you were anxious and God helped you, and then just want that way.
I think it's important too, when you give somebody a lesson, is that we don't want it memorized. Like, because that takes the passion right out of it, right? Then it's just her words, it's not yours. So read it over a few times, as long as you know like the main points. So in New York, I went out to do a lesson, it was in the beginning, like I had memorized it totally. And so I'm like, we had a little curtain and then a stage and whatever. So the teacher before me came off, I went out, I looked at the crowd and the people there, And my mind was totally blank. I had nothing. I turned around, I walked right in the back of the truck. I had nothing to say because it was all memorized. It wasn't my thoughts or my feelings about this topic. It was somebody else's, and that didn't connect with me. So why would I be the one sharing it, right? Yes?
What is Abby's last name?
Rio. R-I-O-U-X.
I can just give you if you guys want her contact, I can give it to you.
Yeah, she got a website. She actually, and another little plug for her, she actually worked for an organization called Hope for One, hopefor1.org, and it's 5 years of free kids curriculum. That's just like I just described, intro, Bible lesson, story, a bunch of different topics, and again, 5 years worth of, so it's over 200 and something lessons. So I'm biased because I've worked with her for a long time, but she writes really good stuff. We have 1 minute. Anybody else want to say something real quick? No? Right on.
You're
So-
doing awesome. Go.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thank you.